This is the Festiniog third class carriage. This is the kit that you're about to build, and this is what you will end up with. It's shown at the moment with two people, which it doesn't come with. As you can see, they're sat 2 meters apart, as they should be. So this is the third class one. Has a removable roof. And we'll see inside. Let's take the people out. Inside you have seating detail, planking on each end, planking on the sides, and floorboard detail. Roof has planking detail engraved in. And now we'll just turn it over and show you the underside. On the side it has 2 handles. The twist handle for opening the door obviously doesn't work, and as you can see there's a grab handle for helping the people get in. And then we move underneath, and it's my standard type of running chassis, metal wheels or plastic wheels. Plastic wheels are binnies with my own axles and set-in bull races, fitted with binny buffers each end. The chassis is removable when you build it, which I will endeavour to show. Also, it's easier using 2 hands, but I'm holding the camera with the other one at the moment. So that's got the chassis out. And wait for it to come into focus. There we go. And the chassis is built as a separate module when you're building the kit, and it loads into the recess which is built into the coach. Now when this goes in, the actual surface there will touch that surface there, and the tops of the axle boxes, when it comes into focus, there we go, tops of the axle boxes there will touch onto there, which I'll show you in a moment. Now when this is loaded in fully, you've got a clearance between the rail head and the underbody of 10 millimeters. This may be a bit tight for your railway, so when you come to fit chassis, whatever you want to call it, into the body, if it is 10 millimeters is too tight, then you can put packing in here, which is explained during the construction, which will then raise the body by however much packing you put in there. So I will now load it in, push it down firmly, and you can see that it's gone down onto the axle boxes, front and rear. So I'll now turn him over and put him back on the track. It does run very, very freely with the bull races. The roof you can hold on with numerous ways. If when you finish building it you're happy, you can glue it, you can use blue tack in the corners, or you can just put some weights, some balancing weights off cars up into the roof to hold it on. Right, let's give you some specs about it. Okay, with metal wheels, the overall weight is 280 grams. Dimensions buffer to buffer is 200 millimeters. End of body to end of body is 170 millimeters. The overall width is 110 millimeters. The distance from the rail top to the apex of the roof is 110 millimeters. The height between the rail top and underside of the body is 10 millimeters. The buffers are fitted in a slot such that when the body is 10 millimeters off the track as it is now, the buffers can be moved between 25 and 28 millimeters within a slot. I didn't show you the underneath. You can see that the buffer nut is accessible through a slot through the inside of the body. It's only available at the moment in 32 millimeter, but I'm investigating a 45 millimeter version at the moment. But wheel track is wider, then there'll be less detail underneath. Now when you follow the next part after this, which is building the kit, you'll find that it's not always this particular model that I show being built. The basic principles are the same for the 3 in this range at the moment. The other 2 are the observation coach or observation car and the other one is the porthole with the 3 portholes in the end. They all use the same components, but obviously a slightly different design depending on which coach it's going in. So when you're building this, you may find, well, that doesn't look like what I've got here, but the principles are the same. And when there are unique parts for your particular model, then I have shown that separately. So please enjoy building. Any problems, any broken bits, then drop me an email and we'll sort you out. Thank you very much. Right, the next part we're going to construct is the chassis come running gear. So we'll start off by fitting the bearings to one of the underframes. So you need to locate underframe number 4, and you can see that's got a bar on the bottom. You turn that over so you can't see the number, and then you place the ball race in with the flange facing up. You do that on the other number 4 as well. Again, turn it over so you can't see the number. Ball race in. Ball race in. And then find part number 5. Okay, turn that over so you can't see the number. And just click that in behind. And then lay that down. The reason we do that is, as you can see, the ball race does protrude slightly beyond, and we need to use part 5 as a packer before we glue it. So again, number 4 with the ball races in, take number 5, turn him over, and then plug him down. And now we have to run some super glue around the edges just to lock the ball races in. You don't need much. It will do a capillary action. Bit top and bottom, and tease it round. And if you do that on all the other 4. Right, now is a good time to lubricate the bearings. So I've now stuck my 4 on. So take the back piece number 5 off. Turn them over and you can see the little balls, and just put a small drop of 3-in-1 I use. Doesn't matter what sort of oil, just to give the balls a little bit of a coating of oil, because when it's actually assembled it's not the easiest place to get to. Right, so that's now lubricated the bearings. We can now start to put the chassis together. Right, the next part we're going to do is to fit the axle boxes. So you need to find 4 of those. Should be in focus, there we go. And they get fitted to part number 6. Bring it into focus. And they go, fairly obvious I think, they actually glue into that location there. Now it's very important that the actual bottom faces there line up with each other. So I'll show you the way that I tend to do this, and I'll just zoom in. Hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. Okay. Right, for this I use a white PVA glue. I won't glue it for the moment, I'll just run through what I do is get your bit of glue, just a blob of small white PVA, drop it into there, and then drop your part down on, and then using, in my case it's a part of the chassis, but use the same thing if you like, it's important that it touches the end. So if we line it up and push it in hard, and then line up the axle box, also pushing in against the upright piece, and then push down. Now you know that it's level with the bottom, and then you do that on the other 3 locations. Well, that's my 4 glued on, and then while the PVA glue is still wet, if you're going to be using out, now's the time to go around with a knife blade and just remove any excess. If you wait until it's dry, you'll find this quite a difficult task to do. The other thing to make sure that when you're doing it is that the half rings are facing up, as you can see on the 4 I've done here. Right, let's move on to the next part. Right, now let's start to assemble it. So start off with the base, and if you find parts number 5, you'll find they've got a lug. Let's move it into the middle so you can see. And they've got a lug sticking out, so that goes into there. It's very straightforward with the numbers facing out, so that's number 5. If you do the same with the other number 5, again number facing out, and then the numbers count down as they go in. So if that's 5, the next one we have to fit is 4, and again with the numbers facing out. You'll find that just slots in where the bearings go. Same for that number 4. Then find number 3. Just rest them in there, hold them with your finger and thumb. And number 3, again writing to the outside. And then number 2, writing to the outside. The other number 2, writing to the outside. Number 1, and the other number 1. And just roughly align them with each other. And we fit the wheels. And sort of prise it apart to do the job. Drop them down into the bearing holes. You have to manoeuvre it around a little bit to make sure they go in. And we do the same on the other side, or other end. Spinning round. Again, force it apart. Tight fit. That's got those in position. Now we put the spreaders in, and they go into, just hold it up so you can see, there's a slot on part number 1, there's a slot on the other side. You'll see there's a little lug, and they just go in to the lugs, into the holes. And it may be you've got to lift it out of the hole to slide it across. It's quite a finicky job to do, and it'll all drop back in again. And we go around and we do the other end. Again, line up one side with the slot, and then lift the other side up slightly to move them out. So the spreader drops into its slots. Line everything back up. Check the wheels rotate. Now we can put the end pieces on. You can see 2 holes line up with the 2 pins, and the other pins line up with the base. It's quite straightforward. Spinning round, do the same the other end. That locks that in quite nicely. And we've got the final pieces, which is number 6, goes onto the outside there, and number 6 goes onto the outside there. Now it's beneficial at this point to put an elastic band around it all. And make sure everything is pushed down firmly onto the base plate. And then just while holding it firmly, double check the wheels rotate. We now have to glue all this in position. So this is best done with super glue, and I'll go through what we have to do. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to run some, while holding a bit of pressure, hold it together. We're going to run some super glue along that area there, which will hold those together. So I'm just going to put a super glue, rub it around a little bit so that it soaks down into the joints. Do the same on the other side. Right to the edge. And take a small piece of tissue and just dab off the excess. And then while you're holding that there, just run some super glue down into the corner. And the same on the other corner. And along the bottom, making sure the end is pushed in firmly. And then slowly move back. Again, keeping pressure downwards. Make sure everything is pushed down firmly. Move on to the spreader. Again, a little bit on the bottom, a little bit on the top. Same on the other side. A little bit in the middle. By which time we can release, turn them around, and we do exactly the same at the other end. So again, a little bit of pressure, make sure the end piece is pushed in. Super glue, make sure it soaks in. The tissue. And again, same as the other end, when we're holding it, just go into the corners. Along the bottom. Making sure this piece is firmly pushed in. Back to the spreader. Again, push down. Top, bottom, middle, and come back to the middle section, a little bit there, a little bit there, and then we put that to one side for about 10 minutes to dry. Right, once you've allowed that to dry, just remove the elastic band. The next thing we have to do is to glue 6 laminates together. And again, we use super glue. And just rub it over the top, the wick down inside. And then we have to pull those edges together. Now you can either pull it with your fingers and hold it, or use one of these little clamps, which I use. It just clamps that, and we turn around, and we do exactly the same on the other side. Rub it backwards and forwards, and again, either hold with your fingers, or use a sucking clamp. And again, we leave that for about 30 seconds. It's long enough for the super glue to go off. And when the glue's gone off, give about 30 seconds, remove the clamp, and with a bit of tissue, soak up the excess glue. Do the same on the other side. That's your chassis constructed. So at this point, be handy just to make sure that it runs true. So you need to take a bit of track, drop the chassis on, and check it runs okay, and there's no slop, no sideways movement. There shouldn't be if you built it on a flat board. And you'll find because it's got ball races, it does run very, very smoothly, very, very freely. So that's the chassis part done. Right, we're now going to construct the seating area, which then the actual body is built around that. So we have a base, which has got engraving on one side and has got indentations cut into the other side. To look like that. Nodules on the bottom, small nodules on top, there's two of those. And there's two with nodules sticking out bottom, plain on top, that's those two. One capping strip, a single piece, and two end pieces. Now the first thing you've got to do is to clean out the actual holes that have been cut. Well, not holes, indentations. Now the best way to do this is with a small screwdriver. I'll just bring it up so you can see it in detail as soon as we come into focus. There we go. Now in that area there, just want to rummage around with the screwdriver just to get rid of the carbon. And once you've done that, using either a fiberglass bristly brush, or in my case an old toothbrush, or use the wife's toothbrush, but don't tell her, and just to clean out the actual hole itself, or not the hole, the indentation, and you do that on all the other ones. So go ahead and do that, and don't forget to do it on the two smaller pieces. Good in there. And just have a rummage around and it'll break all the carbon up. Right, I've done that. Now we do a quick check to make sure that we don't have any problems putting this together. So if you take a piece that's got very small sticky out bits, and you'll see that there's three that we've cleaned up there. That goes in, just goes into those little holes all the way along. And you should be able to hold it and not see any light through it, to make sure you're down firmly and there's nothing blocking where the legs go in. So I'll just bring that up close so you can see what I've done. There we go. And it goes with the markings to the outside as I've shown there. So that's a trial fit. Do the same on the other side. Again, make sure it goes in there and is a good fit. And then the end pieces, again, they should drop into the indentations. They do. And last of all is to make sure the back ones line up with the little ones there. You'll see how it all goes together in a moment. So that goes in there, that's okay. So we check that on all of them. I will do. Right, the next job then is to flat surface, again making sure the printing is on the outside, pushing down into there, then add the next one, which is the end one, and pull it in tight and it should almost click in. And then put the other end one in, and then again making sure you've got the printed side facing out. And you find it does actually stay together quite well. So we now have to glue that in position. Make sure it's pushed down firmly into the slots underneath and is squeezed tight against this one. Make sure you've got no gaps where you've got no rubbish caught in the bottom of those little holes. And then we use super glue. And we go in on the corners. At the top. At the top, down the edge. And along the bottom. And a little bit where the actual tangs go in. And just hold that for a while. Spinning round. Again, we do exactly the same. This end, push down, squeeze, make sure it's all firmly down. Again, we go in on the ends or corners. Again, where the tongue drops in. Let that wick in. Again, 25-30 seconds is more than adequate. And then move to the middle section and just push down, and again where the lugs touch along the bottom, just add a little bit of super glue. Again, keep some downward pressure on there. That's your seating area. Again, make sure that there's no gaps running along there or gaps running along there. It's seated down quite nicely. Right, so that's now all done. So the next job we're going to do is to actually fit the base. As you can see, it's fairly obvious. It's got planking on it, and it goes that way up, and you'll find that it drops quite nicely into all the cutouts. Make sure you put it on the right way up, so that you can see the planking detail all the way around. When you glue this one, it's important that the sides, let me take this off, I can show you. You don't want the sides pushed in like that, you want them slightly pulled out so it runs down the sides. If it's pushed in, then the chassis won't actually fit in. So what we do is position that on there. What I tend to do is start at one end, begin with the super glue, make sure it's pushed down, and then use a little bit of super glue, just go in where that notch is on the ends, just let the super glue soak down in, and just use a bit of tissue and wipe off the excess. Then we go to the other side. Again, we do exactly the same, push down and push that way so the notch is fully engaged. Just super glue, let it soak down in. And a quick wipe to remove the excess. And we turn around, we do the other end, again pushing down and that way to make sure the notch is fully engaged. Try not to get any super glue on the inside because that may stop the chassis loading in. And last but not least, the one on this side. Wipe off the excess. So that's the ends done. Now we're going to move to the halfway. Now what we don't want it to do is to be glued. Bring it up so you can actually see. Right, if I do that, we don't want it glued like that. It's got to be pulled to the outside. So again, down here, we pull it to the outside as I am there. Just add a bit of glue in there. Just soak down in. And wipe off the excess. Just hold it there for about 10 seconds. Then repeat for the other side. And wipe off the excess. Then move to the next one, next one, next one, and next one. So I'll go ahead and do those, and when you come back, we'll move on to the next part. Right, so I've now glued all my round. Next job is to take some sandpaper. I mean, I'm using 80 grit, but 120 grit, something like that, and just gently rub the inside. Give a slight radius, hardly anything, and just to remove any high spots. Right, so now we do a trial fit. So you'll need the chassis you made previously, which I have here. And again, just with some fine sandpaper, just gently rub the outside, just to remove any high spots. Same at the end. Just where the super glue may have got on the side, PVA. Right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to fit, or do a trial fit, of the chassis into the body. But before we do this, you must make sure that any glue you've used on the inside is dry and is not sticky. Otherwise, once you put this in, it's stuck in there forever. We don't want to do that at the moment. So cleaned up all the way around, make sure no glue on the inside. We take our chassis and we drop it in gently, and it should fall in quite nicely until, I'll take it out so you can see what we're doing. It will go in until the actual axle boxes that we glued on earlier on both sides should come down and rest on the inside, which they do there and they do there. So that's effectively your running chassis now. So that fits in there okay, so we can now move on to the next stage. So take this one out, gently pull it up by the axles, slowly ease it out. Put the chassis to one side, and we will now move on to the next section. Right, next section is doing the back rests. So again, you need the part we just built, you need the two back rests and the end stop or the end cover. Quite simple how these go in. 6 holes, so he goes in the first set there, again facing out. This one the other side, again facing out, and they join together at the top to make a V. I'll just turn that round so you can see. It's fairly obvious anyway, there we go. And that makes up your V. Try and get it as upright as you can. So obviously you can put it over there or over there. Don't make it like a drunk man. Get it as upright as possible. So the first thing to do is, once you've got it upright, you need to just sort of tack it, glue it in position. So we start with one end, which I start with this end. So just a little bit of super glue. Make sure you're running, let's say, nicely upright, and it's pulled together. That looks pretty good to me. And just add a bit of super glue into the end there. And then wipe off excess. And just hold that there. And a quick check that we're about right, which we are. So now we can go to the midpoint. Just spread it up and down a bit. Wipe off the excess. Now we need to glue the backrest down to the actual seats, and this is best done from the inside. So keeping your finger on the top, so it's pushed down properly on both sides on the lugs. Take your super glue, and this time just put it on the inside of the lug. That way it doesn't run through, so you don't see any glue from the other side. Just keep a bit of pressure there. We move up to the next one, which is the next end up. And again, you can just get it the lugs in the end. And a bit of super glue into each one. You can see what I'm doing. Again, a bit of downward pressure and squeeze. Move down to the other end, again do the same. Push down, squeeze, then you go back to the other end, wipe off any excess glue, just to clean it up a little bit. Any excess in the middle. You don't want any lumps sticking up here. Again, because it will stop the chassis fitting in. Right, now we can fit the capping strip, which literally just glues straight on top, like that there. Also, you can use a white PVA or you can use super glue, but it's important that it's flush on the end there. So you can use your finger, and it should be flush the other end as well. So in my case, I'm going to use some PVA to glue this one on. Just run some PVA down there. It's not a structural part, so you don't need too much. And then what I do is, if you run your fingers down the edge like that, that tends to take any excess off the edges. And then position it on, level with the end, run your fingers along. And then if there's any excess leaking through, just clean it off. So that's the seating done. So let's move on to the next part. Right, we're now going to construct the sides and the structure that supports the roof. So you'll need the part you just built, 2 sides, obviously in 2mm. The roof structure, or so that supports the roof, quite fragile, so go a bit careful with that. And you'll need 2 jigs. Labelled jig. They're also labelled do not glue. It's important neither of these are glued in. They're purely to assemble the unit to itself. Right, so we start off by adding the side. Oh, you'll also need lots of elastic bands. So if you look at the sides, the engraving goes on the inside. That becomes the outside surface with an overlay put over it at the very end. So you start off with part you made, and you'll see that there's lugs along the bottom and they drop in quite easily. You do the same with the other side, again making sure that the engraving is facing in. They drop in. Then a jig goes up the end, and you can see that it will slot in to the slots. They line up on both sides. You do need 4 hands to do this, but it is possible. So holding thumb and finger and finger on that one on that end there. And then you put your jig to your other end. And then we can slot the roof in, or the support for the roof. It's got the words up written on it, so they go in so you can actually see the word up, and they again slot in similar to the bottom into the little grooves or slots on that side. Just tease them out and they'll drop in quite nicely. So then we put the elastic bands on. So start at one end, so over that one, down and round there, and then do another one down on the bottom. And try and put it so that it goes over the actual tang of the jig itself that sticks out. And do that again, do that on the top. Check it for the other end. So that makes quite a solid structure, which we can now glue into position. I should point out that this arrangement on here will be broken out when it's finished. That's just there to give it some support while we're gluing it. You'll also note that the side pieces don't protrude right up into the jig on the end. That's normal. They only protrude 1mm and the actual jig is 2mm, but that'll be sorted out when we put the right piece on the end there. So the next job then, as I say, is to glue it. Right, so now we'll glue it up. We use super glue, and I'll show you where we put it and then I'll go ahead and do it. It's important again, don't glue the end piece on, please. Right, so we start off with the bottom half where the lugs come through, and just push down gently onto the lugs, and then we're just going to put some super glue where each one of those is, and then with the tissue just wipe it off. Wipe off downwards. Don't want to get any glue on this surface because that's seen after we put the overlay on. So let's do that now. So let's pour out some super glue. Yep, you can see what I'm doing hopefully. Right, for the super glue. Keep some downward pressure. Work it into the joint. And then with a tissue, wipe it off. And just hold a bit of pressure there for 5-10 seconds. And turn it over and repeat that for the other side. And then we do exactly the same on the top, but try not to push down too hard because it is quite fragile. In fact, once you put the glue in there, it may be beneficial just to give it a squeeze rather than a push down. So if you do both sides on the top, and then we'll move on to the next section. Right, so I've done my gluing on the 8 lugs each side, top and bottom. It's now useful where the lugs are is to just put a little bit of super glue on the actual join there, and there, and there, and there. Do that on the other side and on the bottom. So I'll just show you on the top so you can quickly see what I'm doing. So find where the lug is, just add a little bit there, where the next lug is, where the next lug is, where the next lug is, and then with a piece of tissue wipe off the excess. Just run it down the join, try not to stop if you get tissue stuck to it. And then if you do that on the other side and on the 2 bottom parts. Right, next section we're going to do is to fit the end pieces. And you can see they're engraved on the inside. That's the face that goes on the inside, like that. So to do this, try and leave, if possible, one end of the jig in. And we have to fit this onto that end there. You can see there's lugs automatically line up, and we'll go into the right positions all the way around. Now the important thing is that when you're doing this, that these ends here are not splayed out but are pulled in tight onto this piece. And I found the best way to do that is with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elastic bands. The elastic band size I'm using is, I don't know, what's that, about 2 inches diameter I suppose. Quite flexible, but nothing, you know, you don't want huge great bungees. So we start off by just placing them on there and putting our first elastic band over. So over the top and down to the end. And try and position the elastic band on the actual lugs of the rear piece rather than the lugs of the side piece. So then we can add our next one. Obviously you don't have to be pretty colours, any elastic bands will do. And keep adding them, moving down one at a time. You can see it's beginning to pull it into shape. You could do both ends at the same time, but it's much easier. If you're going to cock it up, let's cock up one end at a time, shall we? And last elastic band. Now try and put the top one near the top if you can. And then the other ones you can see about halfway. You should find that that's pulled in quite nicely down that edge, across the top, down that edge, and nicely along the bottom. So it's quite rigid. So now we can do some gluing. We have to be quite careful here. Right, this is where we do the gluing. Now we have to be super careful with the glue here. Now we use super glue. Again, we don't want to get it over the area that will be seen at a later date. So we've got an overlay that goes over there, which will cover up where the pins stick through, but the rest of the wood will become visible. And on the side also, we have an overlay that goes over and covers up where the pins are, or pieces sticking through, and up that edge there. So what we need to do is just put a little bit of super glue. Let's start with the simple one, shall we? We can run some super glue all along that edge there. So that's the first thing we'll do. Then we'll turn it over And we do the same on the bottom. We'll run super glue all along there. So let's go ahead and do that. Double check you've got the engraving on the inside. You've got a nice join all the way around. And we can now add the super glue. So just smear it along the top edge. This part isn't seen, so you can be as mucky as you want to. Take it right to the edge, and right to the edge. And then turn them over and do the same on the bottom. Again, make sure you go right to the edge. And if you cock up any of these parts when you're making it, then just drop me an email and I'll bung you a replacement part in the post. Just tell me which part it is, or send me a picture or an email or something. Right, so that's glued top and bottom. So you can just sort of wipe off the excess, just to clean it up a little bit. Helps the glue go off a bit quicker as well if there's less glue there. And we do the same on the bottom. Right, now we can move on to gluing up the little pieces on the side. So the best way to do this is to take a little bit of super glue. And you can see, yeah, I can see on the film, just put a little bit where that lug is. Take your time over this. Try not to get it on the elastic band. Just work it in there. Do the second one. Again, work it into the joint. Third. Fourth. Bottom one. I forgot to do the top one. And just with a tissue. Don't wipe that way, wipe that way, so wipe off. Just to take the super glue off from that edge. Make sure you've got none down there. And then turn them round. And we do exactly the same on the other side. Then just wipe off. Don't worry if there's a slight protrusion from the end panel over the edge, because when this is dry we just give it a gentle sand just to bring all the edges flush. Right, it's very important now that it's left to dry, so we now put that aside for about 15 minutes just to make sure the super glue does dry off. Right, let's take the elastic bands off now. Obviously we should be using them again now for the other end. So that end's now glued on. So if it hasn't dropped off, take the end template off, or jig. And find the other end. Again, making sure you have engraving inside. Should line up with all the indentations, which it does. So we now Put elastic bands again, we do exactly the same as we did before. Okay, so I've now glued both ends. I've let the glue go off, so we can now remove the elastic bands. And you can also remove the ones over the top. I'll put those to one side. So now gently you have to just sort of remove any excess glue. It's just a gentle brush over some sandpaper, gently down the side, over this end. If there's any protrusion from the end going over, then just lightly sand it off. And then down here at the top. Turn over and we do the other side. And then on the ends, again, just a gentle wipe over. Nothing dramatic, just getting rid of the high edges or high points if there are any. And down to the other end. Right, so now we can fit the other end overlay. Right, now we've completed the two blank ends. Now we're going to put the overlays on. So as before, just make sure that they're smooth. And the overlays go on. Make sure we do a dummy run first of all. Make sure it's flush along the bottom. And 2 fingers each end. Hold it flush on the ends. And flush on the ends at the top. And it should just come in to the particular corner there and the corner there. So that's how we're going to glue that one in. So that's the next job we do. And this I do with a PVA glue. Just squeeze some out. And then we just blob it along the back on the dirty side. And then just gently smooth it out with your finger. And we can now glue it on. So as we did on the trial run, lay it on the back. Make sure we're flush along the bottom edge. And check the top. Again the sides with your fingers. And maybe a little bit of an overhang. And hold that in position. There is some movement, you can go sideways if you need to. And we hold that there for 2 to 3 minutes until the white PVA glue goes off. Up until now you'd have seen construction of the basic bodywork, and the one you would have been seeing or watching would have been the observation coach or observation car. This is the third class carriage. Principles are exactly the same number of pieces in the same places, except slightly different design. That's firmly down. We'll still move it a little bit if we need to. And we go around with a knife blade, and any glue that's oozed through, or you put a bit too much on, you just scrape off all the way around. As you can see, this one has got a different sides to it, because this is the third class one. But it's basically the same as the observation car by putting the sides on and doing the ends, which you've already just seen. So that's that end done. Just push down firmly. Then we move on to the other end, again making sure it's smooth, ready to accept the overlay. Do a trial check along the bottom, edges, and pull down. So I'll go ahead and glue that one, and when you come back that will be in position. Right, I've now fitted the end overlays on each end. So now the important job is to make sure this area is smooth, that there's no part sticking up for when we put the new overlay on. We'll put the overlay on this side. So using just some sandpaper, then just generally rub over no high spots. Do this on both sides. Now we can do a dummy run on the overlay. And it will fit flush on each end and on the bottom. And if you just generally look up through, you can manoeuvre it backwards and forwards very slightly because the wood's flexible until you've got the same amount of surround around all the windows. And you glue that in position. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Again, we use PVA glue. The sides are a bit easier to do because it's a flat surface, it's not curved. And then with your finger, just spread it around a little bit. Stops it oozing through when you stick it on. And on we go. So again, we make sure we're flush with the bottom, flush with the edges, and work our way up. And just visually check that everything sits squarely and you've got the same gap between all the windows all the way around. You can manoeuvre it a little bit, make sure it's level on the ends, and just give it a bit of a push down all round. And then using a knife blade, as before, go around, and where any glue has come through, just scrape it off. The other method for putting this on is with I think they call it a craft mount spray. So onto the overlay, spray on the back the glue. I haven't actually used it myself, but I'm told another method it does work. So that's that side done. And we can move over to the other side. Then we do a dummy run. The next job then is put some PVA glue on again. Offer it up. Line up the edges and the bottom. Put pressure on the bottom. Better. A bit more. Right, when that's thoroughly dry, we then sand the edges smooth. Not a radius, but just get rid of any high spots on there. So that's that part done. The actual fitting of the roof is identical to previous models, so what you'll follow, you'll see a fitting of the roof to the observation coach. So although it will look different to this, it's the same principle and we use the same parts. Same as breaking out the spider's web at the top, that will be shown. So there we go. So please watch the next section and enjoy. Right, so now it's time to remove the supports on the inside. And to do that, it's best to do it with a pair of snips. So I found, oh, are we in? Yeah, okay, right. So we just go around and just snip out the centre section. That then allows you to hold it firmly. If you just push down, it's already pre-cut, it's already been engraved. And then go around the knife and just take them off slightly. And just a quick touch up with sandpaper just to remove the sharp edges. Just crease the sandpaper a little bit just to do the corners. So that's the basic shell done. So we now move on to doing the roof section. Right, now we're about to build the roof. So you'll need the frame or body that you've already built. Just put that to one side a moment. Two parts, quite fragile, but not going to put together like that. And you'll need two of those. You notice that these two have a straight part and a small engrave. I'll bring that up closer so you can see that. The hand underneath. There you can see the engraving mark and it's flat underneath. And then you'll need four of these. Again, they're very fragile. And the reason they're fragile is they're cut. Let's try and get that into focus. There we go. They're cut and scored because once we've built this, we break them off at that point, and that's to help the breaking off. So you need to go a little bit careful with these. If you've looked at some of my other videos on building other wagons, your roof is built to the same principle. It's nice and easy, and you always get a nice curved roof that fits. So We start off by taking the ones with the flat edge and the engrave. Now they go each end, and you want the engraving mark facing out, so it's like that. So just drop him in, lean him against the side so he doesn't fall over. Then you take the other one, again engrave mark, that faces out, and just drop him into there. Then take the other four, which I've got here. Try and put them the same way around. It'll help later on, but it's not necessary, so you can see the actual engraving marks. Doesn't matter which way around they go. Just drop those in to there for the moment. This is a bit like a jigsaw, but more difficult. You start off by taking the long bit, and as you can see it drops down into that slot on the end one there. You then take the next one along and drop him down into the slot. So this bit is not easy, but it is possible. And you take the next one, you drop him down, and the next one, and the next one, and the last one. And then you do exactly the same on the other side, but trying to keep them all together. So lay your hand on the bunch and then just slowly work your way along. Right, once you've got them all in, you need to make sure that they're all vertical in relation to each other. Well, that's just a case of manoeuvring them, not too critical. Right, so at that point now we now have to glue those in position. So I start at this end and using the super glue, just get some glue, just keep a little bit of pressure downwards at this end and just put a little bit of super glue on the inside and do the same at this end there. And then on the outside there, and then slowly work your way along. Now the inner ones, you can put it in 4 positions if you want to. So you can actually cover the inners and the outers. If you get any on the top surface, just brush it off with your finger. And this you do working all the way along until you get to this end. So I'll go ahead and finish that, and then we'll move on to the next bit when you've done that. Right, the next stage is to, now that we've done the frame inside, and we have the roof, is to fit the two together. Now I've got to do this holding the camera, otherwise you won't actually see what I'm actually doing. So you find a flat surface and lay on the roof panel with engraving up. You can see there's an alignment mark there, and there's an alignment mark there. They line up with the alignment marks. It focuses there on the end, and there'll be one at the other end as well. So what we do is we turn the whole wagon upside down, we manoeuvre it until we line up the lines that end. And then we do the same for the other end. And we keep manoeuvring it around backwards and forwards until the marks line up precisely. When you're happy that everything is lined up, you then take some super glue I'll have to point this out, and you put a bead of super glue just in there where the line is, and you do that on the other side as well, and then you leave that for about 5 to 10 minutes for the glue to go off. Then once the glue's gone off, you then have to do a rotate, i.e. you just turn it so you can see it. You then pull the coach sideways and you rotate it down, and then you go along while you're holding it and you put some super glue on each of those joints where it touches. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and do the super gluing now on the centre point, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how we do the next bit. I've now super glued, can't actually get in there, right, I've now super glued the ends. You see better that end where the two lines join up. It's also beneficial to go in with some super glue, let's see if I can point, and actually put just a dollop on each of the cross pieces in the centre where it touches the roof. If you could do that on each of the 4 individual inside cross members, that will help. Right, I've added my super glue to the, there we go, you can just see it in focus now, down the centre of each one. Not too much, just enough to hold it in position. Right, now I've glued mine all the way along, and as I slowly release, it's stuck quite firmly. Now what I did is, while it was laid down on the edge, I actually pushed some super glue right up each of those edges, up as far as it would go. Then we spin round, and then we do exactly the same on this side. Again, tilt him over and glue down each of the joints where it touches the roof. Right, so I've glued mine this side now again. So rotate back up, and we now have the roof glued both sides. So we can then lift off the body, and we now have to do some reinforcing on the roof. Right, what we now have to do is to run some super glue in along each of those and down, let's see if we can see it, that join there. So you run your glue along there and then place your thumb on each side and press and grip it so it's pushed down hard, and also the ends of your fingers there, so that it's well and truly glued to the former. And you do that on each of the ones working your way along. Don't break these off yet, because we haven't got a proper glue joint, hasn't gone off there. So if you try and break these off now, it's going to actually break the glue joint, and we can't do that at the moment. We need to leave that a good 15-20 minutes to make sure the glue is firmly gone off. So while we're waiting for that, that's when we go and glue that line along there. So if you do that on all 6 of them, and then we'll move on to breaking the tabs off. Right, so I've gone along and super glued where we discussed all the way along each of those joints. So the next job now is to break off the legs. And I found the best way to do these so that we don't do any damage is pair pin nose pliers. If you just go in and hold it gently where I'm holding now, you can see that this is the side that's got the engraving on, so you need to push it away from the engraving, and it just easily breaks off. Then we move to the next one, as you can see in the light there, and again just hold it with the snips fairly tightly and just flex it and it will break off. And just work your way along. All that's now left is with some either a sharp knife or a piece of sandpaper is to just tidy up the parts we've just broken off that leaves a little mark behind. So I'll go ahead and do that. Right, I've cleaned all mine up. Now the next task is to make sure the roof actually fits onto the wagon. But you really need to do this when the super glue you are sure is completely dry. Otherwise you do risk gluing the roof permanently on. So it's a simple fact, it should just slit on and be quite a good fit all the way round. If it's too loose a fit and it keeps blowing off in the wind, then you can either add some weight up inside, or you can add some blue tack to those 2 points there, and that will actually hold the roof on in position. Right, next task is to fit the undercarriage. Now this, as we tried before, slots into the opening underneath. When it slots in until the axle box is there, the tops will rest against the edge there, and also this surface here will touch this surface here. So the first thing to do is to make sure we have a slight radius all the way around there, so just go over with a bit of sandpaper or emery paper just to take the edge off there, the corner, and then inside the box we may have had some glue that's gone into the corner there, which will stop the chassis going in. So just take a bit of sandpaper, fold it over and just rub it in the corners to make sure there's no high spots. So you've got a nice 90-degree corner in there. Then load in, you'll find it drops in quite nicely and sits down, as you can see, onto the axle boxes. Now I've designed this such that when it's in as far as it goes there is a 10mm distance between the rail head, or top of the rail, and the underside of the body. Now this may be a little bit too close for some of you, so what you can do is, using some of the cutouts that we had from making the roof, each one of those is 2mm thick, so you can actually drop one of those in there, drop another one in on the other side, and then when you put the chassis in, it's now sitting on this surface on the packers, and you can now see that you've now got a 2mm gap there. This now means that we're now running at a 12mm height, but obviously you can add more if you want, run it 14mm, or put whatever water packing you want to. When you're happy at the right height, you can glue it in, or you can just leave it as it is now. It's quite a firm fit in there. If you're going to glue it in, then just put a little bit of super glue, that point there, and a little bit of super glue just there, and that will then hold the chassis inside the bodywork. What's left to do now is to fit the buffer. So as I haven't glued in my chassis, I'll just take him out so I don't drop it on my packers. There's an access hole for putting the nut onto the buffer. It's a standard Binny buffer. We have a slot, so it's adjustable. Easiest way to do this is a pair of pin nose pliers. Take the nut, and offer the buffer through the slot, where you take the buffer onto the nut. So it's a snug fit. This then allows you to move it up and down on the slot. Now when it's on its lowest point, so that's as close to the track as it can go, and if you're running with a 10mm clearance, the buffer sits at 25mm above the rail head, which then allows you with the slot to move it up by 3 if you need to 28mm. So you've got a 25 to 28mm movement. Now obviously if you're going to put packers in there to move the chassis or the bodywork higher, then if you're on your minimum of 25 and you move the body up by 2, then you're going to end up with 27mm buffer height. Just bear that in mind if you start changing the height. That's about it. So when you've got your buffer height happy in position, is then either with a spanner or a pair of power nose pliers, just grip the nut, give it a couple of turns just to lock it in position, check that it's 90 or not 90, check that it's in line with the bodywork, and you now have your coach ready to roll. The handle arrangement is a little bit different on the third class. There's 2 handles. There's the normal twist handle, which we put on with a little bit of PVA glue, which I'll just get. A very small amount of glue is needed. Just on the back. In fact, that's far too much. I'll just take some off with my finger. And then that lines up where the hole is for the handle. And just gently push down. Square it up. So that's the handle for opening the door, and then the actual grab handle that they use for getting in and out is a U-shaped handle that goes in that hole up, along and down. Now I supply with it some 1mm brass wire that has to be bent, so it looks like, I'll just focus in, there we go. Now bend that with a pair of pliers. The distance you're looking for is 13mm between the inside edges. So that's what we're looking for, is 13 there. And then you actually want approximately 5mm, as you can see. So that's held in place with some super glue. And it's just placed into the 2 little holes that are there. So again, what I tend to do is a little bit of super glue into the hole, just a small amount on both holes, and then offer up the handle. Just lined it up so it's square. And then just another touch of super glue. Now this is the first production version, on the actual ones you'll get, the hole where the handle goes into will be slightly larger, and there'll be a slight of a boss built into the overlay, which will make that a lot easier. So let that dry, and then we turn it over and we do the same on the other side.